Shana, you want to start us off?
I'm Dan Hamill, I'll start it. I'm Dan Hamill. There's awkward silence there. I'm Dan Hamill, I'm the DQ project manager for the Gelman site. I'm based in the Jackson District Office.
Bob Bailey, Scioto resident.
Dan Bicknell, Global Environment Alliance, SIO resident.
Kevin Thompson, local resident.
Max Pettyhone, local resident.
Roger Rayle, Chair of CARD and Chair of Services for Safe Water, and a resident.
Laura Hindle, I'm a resident of Scioto Township.
Shana, Milkie, Ann Arbor resident and secretary for CARD.
Kathy Knol, Scioto Township trustee.
Diana Wright, resident and former employee of Gelman.
Rita Locke Caruso, resident of Ann Arbor and a faculty member at the School of Public Health at the University of Michigan.
So I'm Vince Caruso, I'm a board member of CARD, on the executive committee for the Sierra Club Huron Valley Group, and a coordinating member for the Collins Creek Watershed Group, Ann Arbor resident.
Beth Collins, resident of Ann Arbor.
Marcia Alex, resident of Ann Arbor, soon to be Scioto Township.
Vinny?
No, okay, Matt Knott, I'm a resident of Ann Arbor and the environmental coordinator for the city.
And I'm Jenny Kahn with Washtenaw County Public Health, the environmental analyst. Did you want me to moderate or follow the agenda today, or would that help, Roger?
I think that would be
Good.
great.
All right, so the next item is minutes from September meeting.
Yeah, Roger made a couple suggestions. I had, in the draft, I had a couple errors and I made the changes. So for the board members, I move that we approve the minutes from the September meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you.
Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, sure. All right, so for the elections, this is our first time in CARD doing elections since we had our bylaws, so we're kind of stumbling our way through it. Almost everybody here is eligible to vote, so I suggest for expediency, just abstain if you have not attended. So I'll
We
just,
actually have a list of who's eligible.
well, yes, I agree, but I thought rather than call it out, you could just rely on people's own memories. Roger, are you able to link to the nominations? Well, the nominations that I've received so far are the current officers. Roger Rayle for chair, Mike Moran, who is absent right now, but who has agreed to be nominated for the vice chair again. Myself, Shana, Milkie as secretary, and Vince Caruso for treasurer. Are there any additional nominations? You're welcome to nominate yourself or somebody else. Okay. All right. Well then, I move that we vote on the current slate of nominated officers. So all in favor? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. All in favor? Aye. Are any opposed? No?
That's
Okay.
easy.
Yeah.
We're ahead of schedule now.
Yes.
Roger?
And then the second part of voting, according to our bylaws, is that the officers would reconfirm our executive director, who is Jennifer Kahn of Washtenaw County. So for the board members, I move that we vote Jennifer Kahn as the executive director.
I'll second that.
Yeah. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
You didn't get a chance to
She
vote.
said aye.
You can take the rag out of her mouth.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, well, then I guess we're set for another year. And please be thinking next year if you would like to run for an office, because it's always good for an organization to rotate leadership. So just keep that in mind over the next year. All right, Jenny, back to you.
All right, item number 4.
Yeah, but
Question
I'm
review.
still trying to bring up the agenda.
Oh, okay.
It was one of your attachments, right, Shana?
Yeah, yes.
Dan, do you want to take this one over?
I have a point of order.
I'm sorry,
I like to add an item to the agenda.
Okay.
email.
I'd like to add an item to discuss the consent agreement group.
It's not the consent agreement.
It's-
Confidentiality.
Oh, confidentiality, whatever.
You edited the same thing, right?
I thought.
Not to ask them, any specifics about what they've discussed in confidence, but just to express concern about the timeline and progress or lack thereof. So we can vote on that agenda item adding, I don't know if that's what you want to do.
I thought it was on here, Vince.
It was,
Final.
it's not in the final though.
Yes, well, all right, so there were a couple of objections about having the confidentiality agreement on the agenda because there's nothing to be able to talk about.
Well, I would disagree, so
Oh,
that's why I
okay.
would like to bring it up.
All right,
Put it at the end.
Yep.
And then
Good idea.
if we get to it, great.
Okay.
We'll try and get to that. Otherwise, it'll get tabled to
all right, so that sounds good to me.
Okay. Dan Bicknell, please take it away.
Okay.
On the floor.
Can we go into closed session to discuss this, please?
We need to take a vote on that?
I don't think so. We didn't last time.
No.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think that will be moving into December. All right, so I'll move that. for
Ranking of
that. All right,
72
I move that we table item 5 to the
This is-
December meeting.
December?
Yeah,
This next
It's
is the
October.
quarterly meeting.
I know, November is the quarterly meeting,
Oh.
and I don't think that we want to be hashing stuff out when the DEQ is here.
Okay.
So, can
How
I just-
many, is there anybody here interested in helping prioritize the concerns prior to the meeting? Because I don't think we could do this in a meeting.
Yeah, it was just an observation that, when we started the kind of tracking, I'll call it a tracking form, the initial thing that Kristen and I worked on was for US EPA saying, okay, here are the community issues that are in the DEQ quarterly report. And what we did is we made a list of them. There's quite a few of them. And so the objective was to help us in our communication with US EPA and to track those things which are of concern to US EPA, and they have coined as community issues. So I think maybe at least part of the ranking should maybe bifurcate general card concerns with these are community issues which have been approved, I guess you could call it that, coined as community issues by US EPA. Of course, those are all card concerns. And that's how they got to be there, because of past card letters and comments and community
Yeah,
involvement.
any of the concerns have to have a trace back to when it was raised and discussed.
Right.
And that would be part of that.
Yeah. So my suggestion would be is have maybe a couple lists, one your general list. And then the
No, it's not a
community
separate list, it's one big list. You can always extract out
issues. Okay.
the part that was, because you just start having multiple lists and people get confused.
But just for clarity, I would make it a subset somehow. Either,
This is confusing.
it is, yeah, it is.
Yeah, well, that's why I think we need to.
Yeah, so many of them there, they gotta kind of, like you say, Roger, prioritize.
Yeah, well, there's certain categories.
Okay.
And then, as you say, the ones that have already been voted on may move to the top.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'll help with that. If anybody else wants to help me and Shana with that. We'll do it online so that there's an ongoing, and I think it would be good to have several iterations of this before the December meeting.
Yeah.
So when I looked at that last time, there were some that I thought were redundant or could be
Yes.
grouped.
Right.
And we should try to group them
That's right.
together.
That's
and-
right. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so I had submitted something.
The reason
that
they're
was
redundant is because they were
putting
brought up in different times
putting a
with different
gas at
documents. And we need to keep that detail, so we know when they were first brought up and reiterated over and over.
Yeah, I don't know
But
when
we-
they were brought up.
But I think those can be grouped, like you say, into specific topics, and if we can like Shana thinks a target maybe of 10 would be probably a wise thing. You can think of more 10 things at a time.
72, and then we'll take it seriously.
Okay, all right,
Guaranteed.
so we'll continue discussion offline and try to have something ready for the December meeting. And everybody's welcome to participate in this. All right, so should we move on to number
If you could
6?
send out another quick email just with the.
Yes, the
with
latest
the link-
document.
The
Sure.
link or the
Yeah.
document. If it's on, Google Drive, link to it,
Okay, yep.
that would be good. I'm sure I could find it, but
No, that's okay, it's no
Yeah.
problem. Yeah.
just for the fun of it.
All right, so number 6, Roger and Kathy about the Porter location.
Yeah, so here's Porter. And you can actually see the pump house here at Porter. Now, this is a township parcel because it didn't have to be annexed to the city because there's nobody living there, even though everything else around it has been annexed to the city.
That very well might be in round 4. I got a list of all the, we're in round 3 right now with the annexations, and round 4 is,
Just last night talking about it.
yeah, it's, whether, Matt knows, they're trying to get the last 350 in the next 2 years or something.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have
I mean, we
a,
can check and see whether that's on the list.
Yeah.
I haven't checked, but.
no, when they released the general list, they had all of the parcels designated on the overall city map, but they only showed the ones that were in this last round.
Yeah.
And there's another meeting coming up for that next, I don't remember when they set it for.
you can share that?
Yeah, let me take a look at that. I mean, it's
Share
just
it with
aside.
card admin,
Yeah, it's just aside from that, so it very well may be
or with
on that
me
list.
and, me or Shannon, we'll share it with the
Yeah.
admin. Because we can match that up.
There was a
There's
lot
other
in
ones.
SIO left.
Really?
Yeah, there's enough.
Well, there's a lot of vacant parcels next to parcels that were annexed.
Yeah.
That where people own a double lot and things like that. But this one is important
Very
because,
controversial city council
It was
meeting.
very controversial,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Yes, yeah,
There were
residents.
90 properties in this round, and 40 homeowners showed up, all in opposition of being
Yeah.
annexed. to
right,
the
because
city.
it wants to be taxed on their vacant parcels.
And their water's great, their wells are clean, their septic's working, they don't want any part of it. It was very
Forced
contentious.
annexation.
Very contentious.
forced annexed because of Gelman.
I mean, it's gonna happen, and I don't know what's gonna happen. It was put off until the second meeting.
Okay, for the Pumphouse.
Yeah.
That doesn't have a house.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just trying, I'm sorry, I was
Oh.
trying to get that done with the.
I had Roger,
Yeah.
Roger
Did
fit
they
down.
fit?
No, I guess they was part of it.
All right,
Do you want me to give some background, Roger?
yeah, so, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get us off the path.
Okay, basically, we talked about this before at one of the card meetings back in September of 2017. Gelman, representatives from Gelman approached the township about doing improvements in this Porter Street pump station. And the improvements were going to be enlarging the capacity of the building and adding a pump. So we had, Bryce and I were there at the meeting, Dan was there.
I don't think they're
Is she-
adding, they are,
They're adding, yes, they are.
thought they were upgrading their current pump, but
Upgraded, yeah.
we can argue.
We
Go
can
ahead.
talk,
You finish up.
yeah, because he said they're adding a second pump, but they are not increasing their capacity.
Okay.
That's what you're remembering, that part. So anyway, they were vague at the first meeting, and we wanted them to bring representatives back to the second meeting who could answer some of the questions, because they couldn't answer any of our questions. They just sent the people who were gonna do the plumbing work and the masonry work to the first meeting. Okay, so at the second meeting, it was a packed room. Gelman sent a representative who had knowledge about this underground horizontal pumping
They
system.
sent Keith, he's their person at their
Yes.
facility that runs the treatment system.
Can you remind us what they're pumping for?
Okay, they pump contaminated water from the Evergreen area to this Porter Street station and then for treatment at the Gelman site.
Well, then they pump it back to the Gelman site for treatment, right? They don't treat anything at Porter.
No, they don't. They pump it to the Gelman site for treatment.
Right, so this is the
And then it's
midway
discharged.
point
Yes.
from Evergreen
Yes.
to the core treatment system.
Okay, so basically, what they want to do is, what they're going to do, increase the size of the building from 100 square feet to 200 square feet. They're, as I understood it, they were adding a second pump, but the second pump would only be a backup pump. It's not going to increase their capacity. They were switching around some of the power controls on the electrical control site there. And basically, Doug Won, our planner, felt that this was an administrative site plan review, and they wanted to change an existing plan, make a small change to an existing plan. There was rationale for keeping this functioning, so it wasn't a controversial thing at the meeting. Everyone was in agreement. We did ask many questions, but people were in agreement that it needed to go forward. And then
The issue was that they didn't
he
have
said no.
permits and such initially.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, that was the
There was
contentious
no
part.
increase in pumping capacity. It's a 40 horsepower pump. They talked about cleaning out this system, and I've discussed this with Roger. He said that they're going to use, he called them pigs, to clean the pipeline to iron buildup.
The shoot down there.
And you talked about that extensively. And then he discussed how there's a 4-inch pipe from Evergreen to the pump station and a 6-inch pipe from the pump station to the pond, which he called the core. And we talked about pressure issues. I mean, it wasn't a controversial thing. Dan, if you have something to add.
No, the pumping that they're talking about is not just from Evergreen, they also, Maple Road has to come
Yes.
across there too.
Yes.
So this basically is a lift station, if you want to think.
Yeah.
And they get all the contaminated water that's in the prohibition zone over on what I call the eastern area, and they get it back to their facility for treatment. And then that is discharged under an NPDES permit into the tributary of Honey Creek. So they they're not asking more capacity because they are limited in the pipe that goes underneath, coming from Maple Road, goes up to Evergreen and comes down. There's that pipe size is limited to 100 gallons a minute. So they're limited to 100 gallons a minute of where they take it out of the extraction well. So
I thought it was 200.
is it?
The horizontal well pumps 200
Yes,
GPM.
I'm sorry.
Yes and no. It was rated for 200. They were never able to make 200
Yeah,
because it was bringing in a lot of
angles.
sand.
Too many angles.
Well, then,
Well, no, I'm not talking about the horizontal well. There's two things going on. The horizontal well doesn't work anymore.
yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, the
There's
horizontal.
just a transmission pipe, and I
Transmission
think
is it.
they've always said they're limited to 200 GPM because that's the only way to get any contaminated water
Over to
from the
the-
city
yes.
back to the.
Yeah, I may have been quoted, it was the 200. There is a limit, there's an engineering limit on the pipe that comes across Wagner.
Right.
And the
Now,
lift station is because of that limitation and the pressure they need to get it into their system, that lift station is needed. And so they want.
when you say lift station, I'm thinking like there's a.
Well, I'm calling it a lift station, I thought
But
people
there
would
is no-
understand that mean.
There is no tank there.
It's like a boost.
It's like boost, it boosts, yeah, it's a lift, it gets it from,
So one of the things I asked for about this was, do we have a schematic that shows historically what has happened to the pipeline? So what we have is an as-built drawing, and then we have another depiction that shows up on Gelman maps that doesn't quite match the as-built drawing. And everybody should know by now that the northern transmission pipeline failed. and they had to reline the horizontal well pipeline that goes in the same boring, so they could still get water from Evergreen back to the core. And then, of course, the southern pipeline had a similar problem. But I think, didn't they, instead of using the horizontal well in the south, they just ran a pipeline along Wagner Road? Do you remember that?
Well, everything's going into the Red Pond, so no, it goes from the lift station into there.
Yeah, but how does it get from Porter to the Red Pond? Does it go through this same borehole?
Yeah, I believe it's that same pipeline. I believe the Red Pond is in.
How did they fix when they had
Roger,
this?
I don't know exactly, but it.
So
it
there's a
ends
lot
up-
of there's a lot of ifs here on this because we don't have enough information, and I thought this would be a good time since they're talking about replacing the building. From what I gather from Kathy's description of this, and I kind of wish I was at the meeting because if I could have asked some of these questions, got them answered, is that they're adding a pump so that they're ready to switch over in a hurry. And then they'll have a backup pump once they move that pump and elevate it up. Because the real reason they want to have a new pump is because it floods.
Right.
And if it floods there, I mean, why does it flood there? And so one of the questions was there flooding there before they built this horizontal pipeline and horizontal wells?
They are raising the base of the building.
Right, but why did it flood?
We had a question over there.
Beth has pictures.
Well, I know, they started digging last Wednesday, and they haven't done anything since. It's red tape all around it. I just emailed all the pictures to Roger again, but I talked to Kathy and Roger last week about it. Looks like there's some sort of new something going in, but there's holes all around it, huge piles of dirt, and then nothing has been done since last Wednesday. So I should have emailed you back.
Rain, could have been rain.
I know, so
As I recall in the meetings, they were talking about drainage, the property drainage ditches along Ferry and stuff, that they were gonna be working on that. And that one of the reasons that you had the drainage was poor or the elevation causing drainage problems. And that's why the building itself was getting flooded. And so they're raising so they don't have their people standing in water working on electrical equipment in the building.
But right now, all they've done is dig out the pipes and there's holes around all the piping. Okay.
You know, I mean,
I don't know, it just looks suspicious to me.
Well, again, that piping is utilized to take contaminated water from the east side over to.
They're basically gonna put a pump up higher.
Yeah, they're gonna
And then put a floor up.
That's one of the
Bring-
holes.
Raise the floor.
Well, I don't think it's significantly higher. I believe they're gonna, is it,
Like a foot or so.
okay, I thought that the foundation.
So they're trying to get where the pipes are before they start digging more.
Right, I think what they want to do is, according to Kathy, is that they're going to add a building next to, they said around. but I
No, they
think
said around it. They said that you're gonna build it.
I think around meaning nearby the other building. Because this is 100 square feet, the new building is 200 square feet. The new building is 200, counting the old building?
200 square feet.
Okay, so I don't think they're going to actually build around it, I think they're just going to have it
Remember
next to
saying
it.
that?
I thought that.
Is it relevant? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
relevant.
Anyway, so.
He was moving, so.
So what they're gonna do is put a new pump in, they're gonna have all the connections ready to switch over, then they're gonna switch it over real quick so they can keep pumping through. Then they're gonna go to the old building here, they're gonna take the pump out, and they're gonna hook it up as a bypass, they're gonna have the pipes ready to go, they're gonna raise that elevation as part of this new building, move that pump to the new building, so they have a backup pump.
Can we get a schematic of what, they're, like you said, they're pipes, the piping.
That's my guess.
While they're doing this, they must have some
That's not what they
drawings.
said.
They must have drawings for that. They must have schematics, what's gonna be inside the building.
Property at the end.
And I would like to see schematics of exactly where these pipes are
Yeah,
and what happened during the breaks and after the breaks. You know, it took many months for the break to be resolved because they did not have
Yes,
a
it was.
backup plan. They didn't have a contingency plan. And at the time, Farsad is quoted as saying, well, you know, pipelines like this is about the lifetime of when you expect it to break. Well, it's already been longer than that with the new replacement, so I want to know, what's the contingency plan along with this? What's the contingency plan for the pipeline when it breaks again? Because they're expecting it to break anytime.
Well, can the township request that?
Well, it's not just the township, because again, this might be a city parcel.
Well,
And it goes under a lot of city land.
Washtenaw County.
Yeah.
Washtenaw County
Goes
would
to
definitely
Washtenaw
have
County.
oversight on it, yeah. So I think this is definitely a concern for CARD to get as much information as we can, so we're not wasting our time at meetings like this. We could have already seen what's coming, have time to discuss it. Now, there's already a hole in the ground, and we don't know what the hell the plan is.
Roger, shouldn't any of these details be involved in a building permit?
Yes.
That's what she's talking about, that's what they're doing.
But the building permit, as I understand, was all hand marked up.
So Matt Now is sitting over here, we could
It was
potentially have Matt,
revised,
you know,
first
join the
version.
township and ask for as-built for the piping? Or the city asks for it? I mean,
Well, we have an as-built of the pipeline when it was first put in,
But not as it is now.
not as is now.
Well, that's
and-
not, that's, an as-built is what it is now.
And the other thing about the as-built, it doesn't match what Gelman's maps show where the
Well,
pipeline
Yeah,
is.
we want to know.
Now, the
what it
reason
is.
that's important is the next topic item, which is there are channels and there's other wells that might interact with the horizontal wells.
Kathy, do they have a permit now?
The permit from the township was from our planner. And yes, there was a permit issued from our planner, but we don't issue building permits.
Right.
Washtenaw County
You could
issues
look it up online,
building permit.
anything on that,
Yes.
So in theory, Roger, it should be.
available right there
On the
online.
address, if you knew the address.
You can just do it on the maps and you can click on the actual location.
That may
You don't
be
need
true
the
for the
address.
building, what's going on inside the building. Well, what I want to know is what
The
are,
rest of the piping.
I want to know an annotated as-built of the pipeline and the horizontal wells.
Right.
Somebody's got it.
That doesn't require a permit? As long as the building meets code, you can
No.
put a pipe anywhere you want?
Well, no, you're talking about the building needs a permit, but the pipeline, the whole reason this pipeline was built is so the company didn't have to deal with local governments and their permitting process and their cautionary of how they do things.
Well, some residents did not want a treatment plant in their neighborhood either, so to be honest. you know.
Well, but if you go back, Vince, to the history of the pipelines, there was a pipeline along Evergreen to the first injection well, and that kept plugging up, so they built another pipeline from Evergreen to the second injection well. And that's the pipeline that's actually used as part of this transmission from Evergreen and from Maple. And the city had a lot to say about that pipeline, like double wall, manhole covers every so often, where they actually did detect a leak because they had this extra precaution. Not so for this deep one, this one that's 90 to 100 feet deep. Because it was under the I guess like oil and gas drilling rules, you can just, the jurisdiction, the local governments don't have much to say about it.
Right, right.
So what goes on down there is kind of hidden. We don't know exactly if this is exactly where the screens are. We don't know when the pipeline broke, exactly where the pipeline broke. We don't know if it contributed, because it was leaking for months. We don't know if that contributed to the contamination that's heading towards Evergreen and towards DuPont Circle. We don't know if the pipeline broke nearer the surface because it had to go down like at a 45-degree angle from both sides. We don't know if there was leaks on the way down, which would contribute to shallower groundwater contamination in this area and in this area that wasn't there before. So we need to know this because we have to do our due diligence. The same could be true for what's going on with the South Pipeline. And of course, a lot of this now is in, this end down here is all Gelman property,
Well,
so
the question is,
we don't even have access to it.
do we have leverage right now to get the as-bills or not?
Well, I don't care if we don't ask for it, we're definitely not gonna get it.
Well,
The leverage comes once you point out what the problem is. The problem is we don't know a lot of these details. And we should know, as a coalition of local governments and citizen group, we should know what's going on with their pipes in our waters of the state, carrying their high levels of dioxide untreated back from Evergreen and Maple, back through, coming up near the surface, and going back down and coming back up again, and then making its way to the red pond. That's the missing link. And one of the reasons this is important, and maybe I'll just go right into the next thing because I think we've covered enough on this, are these other places where there could be shallow or shallower contamination that hasn't been discovered, hasn't been followed up on. So let me first bring up the, where's my missing locations? Missing locations. So there's a whole bunch of locations we don't have XY for. I'm just going to narrow it down to, not those, these guys. Nope, not that one either. This one here. So it turns out that one of these missing locations, this GSI 9802, 98, boy, that's right, pretty close to when they were, that's right after Gelman took over, or Paul took over, but they were still using the Gelman nomenclature, GSI. So Paul had already bought Gelman, but they still use GSI. This is a well that goes all the way down to bedrock and had up to 8,000 parts per billion. Now, that's pretty close to where one of the depictions of this horizontal well is. And if we look at the horizontal well values, it never reached anywhere near 8,000. So maybe it had already moved on, or maybe it's just a few feet away. There could be contamination at an elevation here that hasn't been tracked. There's no monitoring well here. They only did the sampling during the boring of this well. And interestingly enough, they didn't put it on any of their cross-section diagrams for 9 years. So then in 2007 and 2008, you start to see this 8,000 parts per billion for this well that was drilled in 98. In my mind, there probably should have been a monitoring well in there long before they did this horizontal. One of the problems with the horizontal wells is that there's 2 screened areas. So this again gets back to the schematic. Dan, do you know there's just one pipe, right?
I believe so.
So when you're pumping from here,
Well, those are all sealed now.
they're now, but when they were pumping, which screen was it coming from?
Well, they were capturing from both screens.
How do you know?
That was the design.
How do you know that, though? These screens are 100 feet long, 200 feet long?
Yeah.
Where's the Y that would allow them to draw from 2 sites to a single pipe?
So again, this is what you're getting as reading is your average. They were getting like 4,000 parts per billion.
You're probably getting most from the first screen, unless there's restrictions.
Probably getting a lot from the first screen
Right.
and not as much from the second screen.
Right.
Or maybe they're only getting from the first half of the first screen. And then water, remember this is a 17-inch borehole that goes from Porter all the way to Evergreen and from Porter all the way back to their near MW11. 17-inch, and what's occupied in there is a 6 3/4 inch horizontal well pipe and a 4-inch transmission pipe. So of that 17-inch diameter, there's still a lot of room. Now you'll say, well, the ground collapsed around it and it sealed it off. But you know as well as I, common sense, that once you push something through soil, it's not going to collapse back to the same density it was before. So this is going to be one of the man-made channels for water to flow from, once it gets down to the water level, it's going to flow, it's going to be a preferred pathway for the dioxane to flow more quickly than it would have otherwise.
Can I say something, Roger?
Yes.
The drilling method, it's a horizontal drilling method. You don't just push the pipe through soil. You basically cut it with, and it has drilling clay, mud in there to keep the hole open because it's horizontal, and then you pull or push the pipe through. But the cutting, so that just like a well annulus, it's horizontal. Just like a well annulus, there is some sealing related to that, the activity, the mud, the filter cake, if whatever you want to call it, on the sides of the hole that keeps the hole open. There is some sealing. So I think you are incorrect stating that it is an open hole going. There is the drilling method they had to use is.
So are you saying they mudded it from here to where the horizontal well was?
To get,
Just all along.
you know, the whole boring, the whole horizontal
entire-
boring has to have drilling fluid to drill it out.
Right.
Or,
But then
they
you
just don't
seem
push
to
it.
imply that they mudded it, that they
They
plugged
wanted
up
it,
the
and
rest of
they
the
put it,
17.
and they installed the screen, and then they developed that area in the screen. So that mud in that area was taken, it was taken away.
So
That's
here
my
there's no
understanding
mud.
of, that we have done when we've done horizontal drilling.
It's not open air.
Yeah, so it's not an open hole.
It's not
It-
open air.
You know, except where the screen is, yeah, they're gonna take the mud away, they're gonna develop, just like they would on a vertical well, they would develop that screen area and, to allow then water to come in, you know, from the aquifer system.
And presumably the mud then fills up the rest of the hole in between these.
It has to, or the hole will collapse and you won't be able to push,
And then it would
push or
break.
pull the
Pipe
pipe.
would break.
So the mud is used to keep the hole open. And as you go horizontally or vertically.
So
So-
where did the pipe break?
I don't know exactly right.
Because one of the concerns of starting.
I want to also, let me point something out. I understand that you're talking a lot of historic stuff, but I want to point something out. Currently, what is and I'm not saying this, I just want everybody to understand. Currently, the consent judgment, that area over there is allowed to have contamination in it. It's allowed to have contamination from Gelman property to move into it. It's not, it doesn't go out, the CJ states that is not non-compliance, that it's.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's allowed to go in there. So, one of the things that is problematic for us as a regulator is the judge has already made the call of the wells that are in there, the wells that have been put in, and there's many wells, as you can see. They've already made the call about
This is not many wells.
doing additional investigation in an area that's allowed to have the contamination, as is going to be problematic for the regulator to try to get Gelman. What the court says in the CJ is that in that prohibition zone, you can't go outside that prohibition zone. You can move around in there, whatever it needs, but we have to monitor, and that's what the monitoring plan identifies, those wells, and the court identified which wells would be monitored and what wells, and what additional wells had to be put in. And then, so, you're talking about that good historic information and good some problems, but it's allowed to be there. So whether it's at 8,000 or 100, it's allowed to be in there because the current it's a eliminate risk type of response activity for this site in the court, and under 201 too. That's what
So the judge made the decision based on available data.
Right, and so
Except for this data.
well, but again, Roger, it's already in place. The prohibition zone is already in place.
I'm just saying, if the judge knew that there was more data and it wasn't given to him, you said there's a lot of wells here. This you think is a lot of wells.
Yeah,
This is what a lot of wells looks like back in '95. And this data is mostly not in the database. So it wouldn't have been part of the.
But that's, to me, that's a moot point now in the time frame, the snapshot we have right now, because there's a prohibition zone that no one's drinking the water, and then also that it's contamination is allowed in there. There is, as long as you meet certain requirements in the prohibition zone, not going past Maple, greater than 2,800 parts per billion, and not going outside the prohibition zone, currently at 85.
They're not going into basements.
Well,
That's
that's
1,900 or into the river.
2,800 is the current in the consent judgment. That's why we're negotiating the consent judgment to update that. But you're trying to get additional work in the prohibition zone is going to be difficult. I'd rather put my effort to where you guys, and we have questions in areas in your shallow groundwater down in the West Park area, along the prohibition zone where there's been some people have had some questions. Is there enough wells along the edges? We have those same questions. I'd rather concentrate that rather than additional investigation in an area that we know is hot.
I think the issue here is where are the pipes? And the pipes should be on a map. We should know where these pipes are. If there's a leak or the potential leak, we should know. And Roger's saying that they got away with some things because they went so deep, they didn't have to go through certain regulatory.
Well, I just think we need to fill in the history on that before
I think
it's
a request
lost.
is, I'm just saying it's going to be difficult to get, additional investigation activities.
I'm not asking for the pipeline, I'm not asking for additional. I'm asking for a compilation of what we know about the pipelines in the horizontal wells. But as the horizontal well is an indication of what's going on down there, here's a well that was 8,000 parts per billion in '93. No, that's higher than the 2,800s, higher than the 85. And again, we don't have any monitoring for that.
Where are you, Roger? What well are you talking about? On the western area or eastern area? 3-3, where is that, Danny? Is that
Oh, sorry.
333 Jackson?
Yeah.
Jackson Plaza.
Jackson
So
Plaza,
this is-
that's around
Jackson Plaza, yeah.
that's around where the property is. That's
Right.
the core area of the very high
So
contamination
this is what's
there.
happened. This is what's happened at that site. So it's gone all the way down to 19 over the years, and then it quit sampling.
And it's moved into the eastern area, which under the current CJ, it's allowed to do. That it's not defining, and that's not, it's not defined as non-compliant, it's not defined as expansion of the plume.
Is the maintenance of the pipeline defined in the CJ?
The maintenance, what's defined in the CJ is not specifics on the maintenance of the pipe. What's defined is they have to maintain, meet performance objectives, if you want to say that the contamination is not allowed to go past the border of the, past 85, or at Maple Road, they have to pump to maintain that it won't go past Maple Road to 2,800 ppb. So it's performance objective, but not specific stuff where it's their engineering, their, if you want to say, maintenance of the pipe, as long
Because
as
he
it's performance.
did bring up a point about how it broke, and
Yep.
they didn't catch it, and lifetime of the pipe is coming to an
Right,
end
I
again.
mean, that's a good question.
That's,
But, and again, realize where it's at, it's allowed to have, that's what I'm just saying, it's allowed to
They
have.
could get into other channels and push it further to Elizabeth Street or to the ones that we're worried about.
And
that are
there is,
outside.
and what they're gonna identify, and they have identified to me, what they've argued to me back is, when I have questions, is we have monitoring wells,
they're
that
gonna
report
have
us,
a
compliance monitoring wells. and,
pressure change.
Other monitoring wells to monitor that.
There's gonna
And
be-
that's what I'm saying, arguing, for me, I'd rather if they're gonna put some effort in and put some more wells, and I want them in specific locations where I have questions.
Just in
you know,
case,
on,
right.
on the borders, on,
Right.
you know, outside that compliance, you know, what the
See if it's
CJ.
moving and-
That's right, but again, realize that the court has already said it's allowed to move around in that border of the PZA as long as it doesn't go outside of that above 85 currently. And that's what we're we're changing that to the 7.2. That's what we want to the new criteria.
So the new pump is strictly only to use if the first pump breaks or goes off. It's not to be used in conjunction with the first pump.
It's not gonna add to the capacity of pushing.
I understand it's not gonna add to the capacity, but what if there's a break and you're gonna lose pressure?
Yep, and
And then you turn on the second pump and you're still, you know, pulling through.
Mhm.
So therefore, it hides a break.
Do you think it could?
you mean pressure, I mean, that,
So one way to detect whether there's a break or a leak in the
is
line.
pressure loss.
Is pressure loss, right,
Pressure drop.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they monitor that. Again, they're trying to maintain their performance objectives required under the CJ it doesn't identify how much total they have to pump, but there are some limitations, like I said, on the piping of what they can bring across. You
If
know,
pipes break,
Yep, they
They
do.
keep a log. They're required to keep a log.
And please understand, that log and that information is provided every quarterly report in here. They identify, hey, we had an electronic
Sure.
outage for this amount of time. Hey, and then if it's a significant time, I get told and I send out to a group. This last year, DQ is committed to do that. But you can go in and see when things break down, what maintenance they've done.
Right.
They're in their quarterly reports.
Okay.
So, you know, I just wanted to point that out, but your pipes break, you are absolutely right, and
Pumps break, pipes break.
things, you know, man-made things, you know, shuts down, and so, they're, like I said, the performance objectives is not to let things
was
out
that,
of the
that your concern, Roger, was that, you know, pipe breaks and, you know, you've got more of.
I'm just
you know,
saying we
higher
need
levels.
to have the complete history of the
And then you'd
horizontal
like
pipeline
schematics.
or the transmission pipeline and horizontal wells.
Well, they're somewhere.
Well, but gathered together, you know, I mean, there's not all of this information is at your fingertips, and
Right.
it should be.
Right.
So we're down to 10 minutes left. Do we want DQ to give their updates?
Yeah, let's go ahead with that. I'll post some things to the CART Core group that'll follow up on my presentation. Because there's a lot more that I wanted to say. Mainly it was about these little channels that were evident, like PLS 0504, where there was really high concentrations found and noted on their cross-section diagrams, and then basically forgotten. There weren't any monitoring wells put in near that. There wasn't any follow-up on, is that a problem? Because maybe it's not a problem because it's only, you know, a small area. But my contention is in these small little channels where there obviously was preferred pathway for 4,000, 8,000 parts per billion to get way off site, that those are probably still preferred channels. And, you know, as an engineer, I would think, well, if you find that, you might want to know where it's coming from and where it's going to, and whether or not there's another higher concentration like nearby. Because it doesn't just flow like chocolate syrup on a table. This is like Larry Lemke has mentioned, it's more like spaghetti flowing out. And we happen to only hit a handful of those little spaghetti things, maybe. There might be more, there might be less. But we, you know, if we don't follow up on where the really high concentrations are, then it's not much use talking about what's going to happen 10 years from now, because you might have already missed one of those little spaghettis. But I'll follow that up with some on the CART Core, and we can discuss it as an ongoing item. Yes.
Dan, maybe go ahead and give us an update?
Yeah, I completed surface water sampling, like I said I was going to on September 18th and 19th. I sampled 18 surface water locations in and around the Gelman site, the unnamed tributary at the outfall. Roger, I went up gradient a little bit further, including the beginning, sampled at the beginning of the marshy area, because we identified that as because of cattails in the marshy areas. I also then Little Lake, Third Sister Lake, unnamed tributary where it crosses Park, unnamed tributary crosses Jackson, Honey Creek at the Dexter crossing, Second Sister Lake, First Sister Lake, the Allen Creek, Glendale behind Glenn's house. And these are all areas that we've sampled historically. The Hannah Nature area, goes into Allen Creek there, and
We should talk, I don't.
well, we sampled it again.
I don't think it's legitimate.
It's the Smith Pond West, Smith Pond East. Those are ponds on the Smith property to the west of the Gelman property. And I did sample again the Arbor Landing Pond, which is the Arbor Landing apartment area. There's a pond up there. Again, it's just mainly
This pond or this pond?
That big one.
The big one, okay.
Yeah, and it's undoubtedly it's their drainage, pond related to the drainage. But I went ahead, we sampled it once, I went ahead and sampled it again. And the West Park Pond, we had sampled that at the time too. And then the Allen Creek, the West Park, one of the branches of Allen Creek right at West Park, within West Park, basically in the pipe. And we had sampled all these locations again there. We would consider this sampling at a low flow time of year. I don't have the data yet. I probably won't get the data here until for a week or two. And I will post it and also send it out to the core group that I normally send data out to. So that was completed. Like I said, we're going to be split sampling. I plan on split sampling, monitoring wells with Gelman like I do several times a year. Here by the end of October, beginning of November. I have the draft almost complete of the DQ next quarterly progress report. We'll probably start internal review here this week, so my hope is to have it out sometime by the middle of October, in October for sure. And that has been complete. We have completed, Jenny has completed, basically the 2018 residential well sampling activities. I will post those results on the webpage here over the next couple of weeks. We also then have the plan in of the 2019, which our fiscal year started October 1st. 2019 residential well sampling, there'll be 117 wells are proposed right now. And including wells along Dexter, West Liberty, south of the property, based upon some requests from stakeholders. Saginaw Court, which is down along West Liberty, south of West Liberty, Westview Way, down that area too. West Delhi and Elizabeth are the main areas, but
Those are residential wells.
Those are residential existing wells.
And I'll jump in and say we had no new detections in 2018, so that's good.
Didn't let me finish with that.
Yeah, sorry.
I wasn't. No. No, she does the work. I mean, DQ pays for it, But and we discussed. Let me make that clear again. All these wells are. Jenny and I discussed. We propose if something comes up that either of us find, we add wells. Okay. We have some of these wells are on every 2 years. We sample them. Something like that, and we don't sample every well every year. But if we get information that says we need to sample, we sample.
Hey Dan, when you're sampling the surface water locations, these are set locations?
Yeah, it's the same areas that you have XYs on. You may not have all the XYs like the two new right up by the discharge.
So when there's a new one like that, do you have a naming convention for how you?
No. When you mean a naming convention, do I have something structured? No.
Yeah, I mean, because when you do this over time, like every 2 years, we might want to hold the data together and look at what happened over time.
You keep the same name.
I keep the same name from surface waters. If I've done it one time, it's going to have the same name.
Okay, good.
But as far as a scientific nomenclature,
and those are going to go.
I have, for example, the two extra ones at the outfall.
Right.
I have outfall up, and outfall marshy area.
As long as we have a designated name that's consistent,
Yeah,
and an XY
There'll be an
that's
XY.
consistent.
you know.
And if it
But
is
it's
a
very close
vertical
to
sampling,
that
we need to
form.
know how far down. I'm satisfied with that.
Yep.
I have a question about two of the wells, but I can send you an email about it.
Okay.
May I ask a question about the wells, sort of at the leading edge of the plume in Ann Arbor?
Mhm.
There is, if you look at Slauson Junior High School, Slauson Middle School, just for a
West Park.
second.
So they-
I'm sorry, having grown up in Ann Arbor, I don't know street names. I can take you anywhere you want to go, but I need landmarks, not names. So it's down about Ravina and 4th Street or
So
something.
here's the Northwest Supply Well, here's Montgomery.
I know, but Slauson is east of that.
It's
East. There you
Slauson
go.
East.
It's probably right here.
There we go, there we go.
Yeah.
That is, that piece of land with a sort of X-shaped crosswalks on it, just east there.
Right.
Thank
It's the
you.
park, right?
That
Wheeler Park.
is city property.
Right,
Yes.
It, I think, is part of Slauson property.
it's Wheeler Park.
Well, it used to be Slauson when I played
Whatever.
field hockey. Because that used to be an overflow school athletic field. That's, I'm
Okay,
sorry,
anyway,
that's my
so
handicap.
yeah.
There is, from time to time, standing water there.
Oh, yeah, very high water table.
And since it's on property the city already owns, access for surface water sampling, or maybe even a shallow sample, is, I would think, a no-brainer.
They,
We did shallow groundwater investigation that included wells on, right next.
Samples,
Yeah,
yeah, Colin Smith's house.
Yeah.
that is Waterworks Park across there.
Yes,
That-
water-
Where they had 2 samples.
I would,
with
say if I
Dax
was,
and Dax.
We had temporary wells put in there, we had detection of dioxane there, but it was below, it was in the 1 to 3 ppb, I don't remember exactly.
but how
And,
long ago is that? The question,
2016, so there was not permanent wells put in. And I wouldn't sample there, I because there wasn't any water there in the dry part.
the gist of my question is, if there was dioxin there then, and the dioxin plume is moving, is the trend in concentration up, down, or zero?
That's, some of the stakeholders have asked that, have been, and continue to ask that. We will be evaluating where to place additional monitoring wells in the future. We are doing that right now in our discussions with Gelman related to the change in criteria from 85 to 7.2. We have not committed to put some permanent wells, that we've been asked many times by the stakeholders in this room. And again, from the lines of evidence from the original investigation, they are, there is positive detections, that it is within the prohibition zone, contamination is allowed to be there. We are going to be looking at evidence to make sure, looking at information to make sure people are not at an immediate risk, and the concentrations
That
there.
is within the prohibition zone?
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. See the red line?
So these are the two hits that he's talking about.
12 and 13.
RL 12,
And 13.
2.7 to 3.3, and then RL 13, 1.9 to 2.
So
Again, that was a
we
few
were,
years
we
ago.
were, at that point, we were trying to eliminate, or trying to determine if there's immediate risk for vapor intrusion. Again, the screening criteria that we had back then was 29, so we were below that. The current proposed criteria is 1900 ppb. So we don't have any information, and there has been some questions of, well, we don't know, but the lines of evidence that we have that we're not approaching that 1900. If, again, we are in discussions of what is needed to determine a change in the consent judgment, it's confidential negotiations, a change in the consent judgment related to the 7.2. That's all I can say right now, so, but.
But if you have concentrations above 280 at a home, and they're pumping that into the Allen's Creek, it violates the prohibition zone. Because that standard is 280 into the groundwater, surface water interface. So even though technically it go to 1900, if you're pumping storm, water out of your basement into the Allen's Creek, your violation if you're over 280.
Well, that's the new criteria.
Yeah.
But again, it's being regulated, this site is being regulated by the concurrent consent judgment, and that 280 is not identified as the GSI.
Right. At this point.
At this point in time. So,
Right.
again, in future, as we make changes and needs, we will be evaluating the need for.
Good chance it'll be adopted though.
Dan, did you happen to get any word on when you're gonna post those 2 items I was asking for a month or so ago?
No, the reports, I haven't got them scanned, Roger.
Right.
I have not got them.
These are early reports. I want to finish up the cross-section diagram trove that I have. I'm just waiting for those.
Yeah, they're backlogged and I'm gonna hand deliver it. I just, it's not worth getting it up there and losing it in the backlog, so, when I get the opportunity, I will get it scanned.
Appreciate that. Sooner the better.
Any other DEQ updates?
All right, I will be posting, or have started the process of posting the August NPDES, the August lab results, the DQ database in August, and the resident well sampling for 2018.
Dan, have you noticed any well increasing that you want to highlight in your quarterly report?
No, that I'm not gonna, this quarterly report will not have detailed trend analysis. It's every 2 times a year. No, I have not really noticed, Roger, any ones, again, that we're looking at it as an overall picture of what the current CJ, what the CJ requires. And so they are in compliance at any compliance monitoring wells at the prohibition zone borders. And so I haven't specifically identified one or several wells at this point.
So, but if we notice something, we can send it to you?
Absolutely, Roger. I'll take a look at it.
Because I know there's a lot to look at every month or every quarter.
Yeah,
And
there is.
I'm not sure you have all the tools you need to do that, so.
I don't disagree with you there.
Tommy and DEQ are always willing to hear concerns or recommendations, or we appreciate that.
Yeah.
The next card meeting is Tuesday, November 13th. It's a daytime quarterly meeting. It is the second weekend of November
Second.
because of the election
Yeah,
on this.
because of us, we get
Thank you.
the election day off.
And you didn't want to come to a meeting on your day off?
We only get it every 2 years, and I didn't think we were getting it this year. I was kind of happy when you guys told me. Now you guys get it all.
You can always vote absentee.
I just want people to understand it's the second Tuesday in November. Usually it's the first for the court card meeting like tonight. It's the second one because of the election day.
In the morning meeting, 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 to 12,
Yes,
right? Is that
yes.
what you have? And DQ, not only me, but it'll be my supervisor and I believe some DQ management are planning on attending if they can.
We kind of skipped
Our
over
AG,
the-
our AG, the Attorney General that's on this case will also be here.
Kind of skipped over the whole PFAS thing.
We can
We'll
do
cover
that next time.
November?
No, it'll be better next time.
I do have one, Jerry wanted me to make one announcement, just because Huron River Watershed Council or Watershed and Milford are hosting a public meeting this Thursday night on PFAS in Norton Creek area, which isn't, and DEQ Southeast, people from DEQ in the Southeast, which is in their district down there, will be in attendance, and it's this Thursday, October 4th. So it is.
Will you do it?
No, I will not. It's not my, PFAS, I have enough with dioxane on the site. PFAS is a whole group within, my district supervisor is a key person in for Washtenaw County in our district. But I stay away from it unless I'm asked, because it's coming at us quickly. So much information that I try to concentrate on Gelman.
I've been trying to kick as many hornets nests as I can.
So, but the Southeast District reps.
Jenny's gotta leave to get her babysitter,
Yeah, yeah,
so
sorry,
we can
Jen.
wrap up here quickly. Everybody, thanks for coming.
Short still? Hang on, I'm wearing a sweatshirt, so even at the top down,